Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Brian Fox. This is my channel, I Hate Rock Music. And this video is going to be about a band called Simply Saucer. And the only reason we know they exist is because I can't remember what year it was. I think sometime in the 80s, an album was released called Cyborgs Revisited, Simply Saucer, collection of recordings. And the band apparently existed from about 74 well into about 1978. And so now there's a great CD compilation that has basically all their known material. They probably have other stuff in the vaults, but this is all the stuff they chose, the original album, plus a bunch of bonus tracks from 1978. And they've done a reunion in 2006, and they actually released a couple of new albums in 2008. 2009, Half Human, Half Live, and then Saucerland in 2009. But I'm going to concentrate on their original recordings because I tend to do that. I'm more interested in these original bands and their original heydays. And Simply Saucer is pretty remarkable. Let's get into the band a little bit. Edgar Bro on guitar and vocals, John LaPlante on keyboards, Ken Christoph on bass, and Neil DeMarchant on drums. And they started as a six-piece and had various members, and you can look up their Wikipedia page and see a long list of people that came and went out of the band. But that's the original core band, and the one that came out of Ontario, 1973, 1974. And so these original recordings, I was really shocked to find out that Daniel and Bob Lanois recorded this stuff. So they're obviously world-renowned producers at this point, and it looks like there was an actual attempt to get the band recorded and perhaps have an album released, and it would have been amazing for a record like Simply Saucer's Cyborgs Revisited to be released in 73 or 74. Really interesting band. They only had one actual piece of vinyl release during their lifetime in 1978, a 45 called She's a Dog, backed with I Can Change My Mind as the B-side. And they're remarkably consistent from 74 to 78. Of course, that's only a 4-year period. And their music was pretty relevant in its early days. And then by 1978, with the kind of sound they had, they were still relevant to the emerging punk scene. So what do we have with their music? It's a really interesting blend. It's basically a kind of a psychedelic garage rock with some prog elements, purported to be very influenced by the Stooges, the Velvet Underground, and Pink Floyd. And I can hear all those influences. Certainly the heavier side of Velvet Underground, White Light, White Heat period. And then they have really weird synthesizer blips and whooshes going into it. Which it kind of takes them to another level. And that kind of stuff kind of reminds me of an American Hawkwind in a lot of respects. But pretty fierce stuff, pretty noisy stuff. They have a lot of short numbers and then a couple of longer ones where the Pink Floyd influence comes in. It's all recorded fairly well. I will caveat that the band is a little sloppy at some points, particularly in the 74, 75 recordings. The part of the recordings were from a rooftop concert in 1975, and then the studio stuff from 1974, and then a bunch of bonus tracks from 1978. And early on, they're a little sloppy, and but that's forgivable because the kind of music they're doing is so damaged and kind of an art rock thing, that it kind of works. And it's really cool stuff. The singer's really cool for that kind of music. Guitar player's got a great sound and really kicks up a lot of noise and debris. And a pretty heady brew. And like I say, if they'd actually come out in 73, 74, it would have been pretty remarkable because they definitely remind me of Hawkwind. Sometimes they remind me a little bit of the Pink Fairies, who apparently were an influence on them, and a little bit of Roxy music with all the synthesizer squigglings and everything else that's going on. So they'd be pretty much a straightforward rock band, except for they introduce all the synthesizer and electronic noises, which makes them a lot more psychedelic and weird and arty. But it's definitely a brew that works really well. So I recommend it. As always, I'll post it below. Um, you can check it out for yourself. They got a little more streamlined when they started getting through material in 1978, and they're obviously a little more rehearsed. The songs have a lot more clarity, but boy, the stuff from '74 and '75 that makes up most of the original LP um, is just really great stuff. And again, we're really fortunate to have what we do. Would have been nice for them to have an album proper, and even better if they had actually got in the studio and got a full production. Not to say that Daniel and Bob Lanois didn't do a great production job. They did a pretty good job with what they had, but to get them into an expensive studio and really get things recorded well would have made this a total revelation. But as it is, it's an important piece of Canadian rock history. Probably one of the coolest psychedelic bands in Canadian history, and definitely a missing piece of the puzzle of that era of music. So I don't know if there was any label interest in the band. Doesn't sound like they played much outside of Ontario, so they were definitely a local phenomenon. And so they weren't really set for the big time. So makes it all the more wonderful that we have this recording uh, that exists and that it's as good a quality as it is. And what an imagination! The fact that they were insulated there in Ontario and didn't really go anywhere probably helped uh, create this heady brew, this eccentric, idiosyncratic musical adventure that they went on. And like I say, for 73, 74, having all those great influences like Pink Floyd and Pink Fairies and the Velvet Underground and Stooges and Roxy Music is a band after my own heart. All wonderful bands, and I like those really quirky bands. And so anyway, for those of you who haven't heard Simply Saucer, as always, the link's posted below. Check it out. If you like all those other bands that I mentioned, this is a band that you may end up loving. And so there you have it. Simply Saucer, a nice slice of Canadian psychedelia that we now have for the world to hear. I'm Brian Fox. Thanks for watching I Hate Rock Music.